Hi, welcome to Local Science Student Association. Today's topic, we're going to be going over the TikTok ban. So if you have any thoughts, please speak up, open discussion. There's also a sheet that will be handed out for extra credit opportunities and stuff. And next week also we're supposed to be doing a special crossroads where we're having Professor Montagano. Thank you. I was blanking. Professor Montagano is going to come here and talk about like intro to politics and philosophy and how that correlates with each other. So if you have any questions for that, stay tuned.
Okay, yeah, we'll, for those of you who are new to this, we do this every Wednesday at noon in the lobby. Everyone's welcome to participate. If you weren't expecting this, you're still welcome to participate. We will pass an attendance sheet around in just a few minutes where we can verify your attendance. If you place a faculty name next to yours, we will contact that faculty. We can't guarantee that you'll get any credit for it, but we will contact that faculty and let you know that you were here. So, what's going on with TikTok and China and the law that was and then wasn't, or is on hold? Is it all just politics, or were there real concerns? Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, I don't think there were any like concerns beyond like what, like Meta does, collecting all of our information, like selling it to people so that they can like advertise to us better. I mean, like China's basically doing the same thing. It's not like if China knows like what you shopped on with Amazon, they're gonna like have some national security threat over the nation,
So is there anything we need to worry about then? I mean, again, this was just much ado about nothing?
I agree with him. I think that it's not any different than what all the media companies in America do. I think the only difference is obviously it's China. I don't know if that is a threat or if that is like even like a national security threat or anything like that. I feel like it also might be something that a lot of like people like Meta and stuff don't want, just because it takes away their market, kind of.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we should be concerned about TikTok, but not in the way that the current political climate has been worried about. I don't think TikTok is an issue of national security, because like all the others have been saying, they don't do anything different than U.S. companies regarding data collection and algorithms. But there was a recent, data leak by TikTok, or a recent leak of TikTok's reports or something like that, and they are fully aware that their algorithms and that are promoting harmful behavior. I think they acknowledged that their algorithm was more likely to show a person who's depressed content that deals with suicide or mental health issues, and basically worsen that person's mood. And they were aware of it, and they chose not to do anything about it. So I think the concern is more of a societal harm than an actual national concern about security. So I think TikTok is a problem, just not the way that people are talking about it now.
So you're thinking that it's a broader problem with social media in general?
TikTok is definitely the worst offender. I mean, they're the biggest platform regarding this issue. So I think they should get a lot of focus on it, because they are the biggest. Of course, we should shame the other American companies like Meta and whatnot, but I mean, they're the biggest fish in the pond.
Okay. Others?
I'd actually kind of agree with that, like the short form content of stuff, and then everybody's everybody's got their own version. TikTok, YouTube Shorts, Instagram Reels. Everybody's trying to copy that model. And I think with like the ban, it's probably more so just the American companies wanting their share and wanting their piece of the pie, and running off of a foreign. Using national security as an excuse to run off TikTok to then use their own platforms to then get their cut of that. Like you were saying, that using their algorithms to get that.
Yeah, like most views and whatnot.
That short form stuff.
I mean, even if you were to ban TikTok, you're going to go to the other platforms and do the exact same thing. You're going to download your videos that you have from TikTok because they're going to be saved in your phone anyways, and you're just going to upload them right to another one. Because people just look at it for money and views. They don't really think about, oh, let's actually help somebody in some type of way by spreading awareness to this situation or whatnot. They just want the money is all they see.
I think there is like a real issue with short form version of content being used as news and people using it as like their primary source of information. But the fact that TikTok is owned by China is like the excuse to go after it. So like all the companies are doing this, and it is a real problem, but they're not going to go after something like Meta or YouTube Shorts because it hurts people that are funding them. It hurts people that have influence and power within America, whereas going after TikTok kind of just wins you political brownie points while also going after a problem. So they can kind of exclusively target a problem that's present with all of these sites.
So there is politics involved.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. All right, others? Yeah.
Do you guys see as like the ban, like them actually going through with it, like them like carrying it over?
That's interesting.
Because they keep going back and
I don't
forth.
think so. I don't think the ban is really going to happen. I think we've kind of, like, there's a lot of steam behind it. I think what shocked me the most was the fact that so many people who relied on TikTok as a business or as a way to conduct business were so vocally against it. But truth be told, I don't really see this as really happening. I think worst case, or most likely what's going to happen is that rescind it and a constant extension of the deadline, most likely, or Trump going back on his word and just rescinding it. So.
Now, following up on a thread that I'm sort of hearing throughout this conversation is these short form videos that have become so prevalent everywhere. Many years ago now, almost well over 35 years ago, there was an article that was published called The Incredible Shrinking Soundbite. Now this had to do with news coverage, not with social media. It's long before social media, it's long before the internet as we know it. But the article demonstrated that news reports on television, okay, were shrinking. Video clips that in the 1960s averaged a good 30 seconds or more were down to, I believe it was under 10 seconds. And that's only continued. So that when you see news reports, when somebody gets interviewed on a news report, it used to be that they were interviewed for what nowadays would seem like an eternity. Again, 30 seconds or more. But by the 1980s, that had shrunk down. Actually, I think it was well under 10 seconds. I want to say it was 6.8 seconds, but I don't remember the numbers exactly. So it's just a real quick clip. And this reminded me of that. Do you think there's a link between the two? Does it have to do with our attention spans? Are our attention spans just shrinking as well? Can we not deal with anything if it's more than 15 seconds?
I think I saw somewhere something about how like especially younger children, like children like middle school, elementary school right now, like their attention spans are much worse than before, and I do think it definitely is an issue, and it definitely probably started from TikTok, but I feel like at this point there's really, it kind of already happened, if that makes sense, and I feel like in order to like combat an issue like attention spans and stuff is for people to not be on their phones as often and to do things like reading and research instead of just using like short form platforms to like get their news and like get sources that are probably false or like at least very exaggerated.
Yeah.
Dopamine and people today, people are chasing after it constantly. If it's not through TikTok, it's through YouTube Shorts or Facebook or something like that. But it's just going to keep continuing where we're going to keep chasing the dopamine, but that attention span is also going to get shorter and shorter, especially in cases with people with ADHD when seeing things such as that.
Okay.
I was going off of when you like mentioned kids. It is really crazy to see like how different little children are now, especially because media has noticed like what things to do to get children's attention. So like bright colors, fast movements, like rounding of like shapes and stuff. Like I don't know if you guys have ever seen Coco Melon or have had to like watch over like little kids having. I've had like a whole group of kids rowdy, playing, can't get control of them. You put on Coco Melon, they all go to their chairs, they all sit down, they all stare. It immediately, like all 5-year-olds all like know immediately, oh, Coco Melon, and just like sits down. It is crazy to watch comparative to like anything that like we grew up with. It's the way media has used like attention spans, especially towards children, I find to be really scary.
I want to go off of that. I'm thinking about it, like especially with parenting. A lot of parents, it's really difficult. Like when you mentioned how they're all like rowdy and like kids, that's just the way they are. But like the second you put them on social media, it's like they stop and they just pay attention to that. And a lot of parents are like, I've noticed that a lot of parents are using that as a parenting style now. Like they're not like parenting like, oh, well, you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't be acting this way. They're just like, okay, we'll just turn on the TV and we don't have to deal with it right now.
It's like the iPad kids. It's like the I was helping out with like some grade schoolers, and we were in like a little classroom area, and I had to tell one of them like, hey, please don't make TikToks to Eminem in like the classroom. You shouldn't know that. And I can't do much more besides tell them like, hey, please don't do that. And it's just like what's going on? Like how is this like affecting like little ones especially?
All right, we actually have an online comment about what we've been discussing. It says it's just entertainment. The majority of Americans use it for entertainment and for business. I assume referring to TikTok. So is that all we do now? Is just entertainment? I mean, you guys are talking about how young kids are stopping everything they do just to watch these things, right? And so, is that all we do now? Is just entertain? You guys had your hand raised first. Go ahead.
Well, going on like your teaching stuff and whatnot, teachers in schools are actually, like I feel back when I was in high school just a couple of years ago, even my teachers then were like, hey, we're going to do this short activity. And then they get it over done with and do something else because people can't focus so long because they're like, oh, it's taking forever. I don't want to work for an hour and a half. Even there are studies that are saying like longer classes are making students not paying attention and learning because they're getting exhausted just learning one topic at the same time. So they're shortening classes but making more classes, if that makes sense. Like you have like instead of 5-hour-long classes or 5 1-hour-long classes, you now have like 8 like 40-minute classes or something like that. Because they're noticing that students aren't paying attention and they want that short thing. Even just in like little schools all the way to high schools. I even noticed it in my brother, like he can't focus on his homework for longer than an hour, it seems like.
So is there a chicken and egg question here? Is it our shortening attention spans promoting this, or is the development of these short form videos just exacerbating our attention spans, destroying our attention spans.
I think people have like naturally pretty short attention spans, and the technology is catching up to the fact that we prefer things shorter, faster, as quick as possible. And it's not just the technology catching up to that. I think it's kind of the people that are designing it catching up to it too. So like you talked about the news 30 years ago and how it was getting shorter, and that's just an evolution of this. And it's just because the technology has allowed it to evolve in this way, but also because the people behind these innovations of these companies realize, hey, if these people have shorter attention spans and they want shorter stuff and they're willing to pay more for shorter, faster stuff, then that's what we should focus on. So I think it's less of the technology changing us and more of the technology conforming to how we think and operate.
I do agree with you. I don't really know it. I don't think I would say that like this, the attention spans are like causing or becoming short because of TikTok. I think I agree with you. It's a natural evolution. I think it's just technology just becoming more beneficial to us, at least in terms of entertainment. And there's going to be side effects, in some cases harmful side effects, when it comes to sort of abusing sort of our attention spans when it comes to short-term content. But I kind of want to go back to like the idea about like kids and TikTok, and like I think like my generation, like we grew up with technology being on the computer and whatnot, but it's different from how kids nowadays are on the internet. Like I remember watching longer videos, reading articles, and playing games like little skill and whatnot. And nowadays it is more shorter and more attain the kids' attention. But I want to kind of propose the point that I think our attention spans are naturally short, like you said. But I think through education and sort of natural development, we grow our attention spans. I think it's a learned behavior, and because of the content nowadays, that's just slowly starting to go away. So
This might be crazy to throw this out here, but when I was younger, I would babysit the kids across the street from me, and they're like now 10 or whatever, but I would babysit them when they were like 5. We would go outside, play anything they wanted to do. We would have fun. Now I go over there and babysit, and I sit on the couch because they're playing video games. That's all they do. I feel like what could have happened, or what has happened, is COVID. We were stuck inside for 2 years, and everybody had their devices. That's all you knew. Even homework was online, when homework used to be, here's your paper, go home and do it. And now, since COVID happened, everything's online. So our attention span has become short because of COVID, in my opinion, but also I do think it's like natural how it has developed over time. I just feel like maybe if we weren't all stuck inside for 2 years and felt like the world just magically disappeared somehow, we would still be using paper and not technology to get us so far where we are now.
I definitely agree. I think COVID kind of like exacerbated the problem because you had like issues where like kids weren't even doing the homework, like they were assigned stuff and they just didn't do it, and they could get away with it because everybody didn't know what was happening. And I know like literacy rates went down, and a lot of like teachers that are like getting back and they're getting in with like these age groups, they're not meeting normal like criteria, like they're not meeting like reading and math recs that kids their age used to meet. So I think it's just that like overall they were just lacking in education for about 2 years, especially like younger, like very like grade school age children had like a lot of issues for that, like those 2 years. So I think it just kind of exacerbated the issue, and then you had like things like social media and stuff that like kids that were only ever focusing on that during COVID, it just made things worse.
I mean, building upon, like, I guess the COVID, I mean, like, everyone's got more online, and honestly, I think it's I think like the shortening of an attention span or the increasing reliance on like short form content and like I guess like instant gratification of like entertainment or whatever. I think it's kind of a symptom of despair where there is kind of like there's like a general like malaise about society. Like you kind of feel that there's something wrong and that isn't good, and instead of I suppose like thinking about the problem, it's like a kind of opiate that like makes it okay with being like kind of coping with it rather than like attempting to like demand change or think about like solving it. And I think all of the like the short form content I think is a symptom of that. It's a sign that people want to not think about things, and they want to like open TikTok, scroll for like however long while they're like waiting in like a lobby or something, you know what I mean, instead of having to like be alone with their thoughts for however long and think about like the gravity of their problems or the society's problems, or have like the kind of like blocking out with white noise the existential dread of all the issues, especially if you're like Gen Z and you're thinking about like climate change and all that. There's a lot of like existential like threats hanging over you, and you're just like, what? I could just not think about that and like kind of reach like a more comfortably numb kind of situation where like I don't have to like process things.
So that's an interesting idea in that it could be an effect of information overload. Is that what you're sort of suggesting, that there's too many other things going on?
It's part information overload, because obviously you can know about all the bad things that are happening in the world all at once, right? So like it definitely increases the like dread of like it all being like overwhelming and too much to like possibly deal with. But I think it is also just a civically there isn't like much hope. You know what I mean? Most people trust in the government is like completely destroyed. And everyone, and so they don't see hopeful prospects for the future. You know what I mean?
Okay.
I'd argue it's almost the opposite of like information overload. It's almost like an absence of information, in the sense of like you get a 30-second summary of something and you're on to the next thing. You don't really know what's going on or really what's happening. And to kind of run it back like the news stories, right? The more stories you can fit, and then the more stories you can fit in, more ads you can run, more money you can make. And so it's just kind of that progression of how much more can we get away with. And then to kind of bring it all the way around, I guess, if you have a Chinese company that can then run an algorithm that promotes different things to different people that aren't going to be able to get the full scope of that story because they're just getting a 30-second summary of some guy going, hey, this is what's happening in South Korea today. You're not gonna get that full picture from stuff, and so you're gonna have people thinking they're informed, but are really ending up less informed when you look at a big picture kind of thing.
Yeah, it's interesting how you mentioned the opium kind of crisis that China had, and that kind of got me thinking. Do you think in today's world is TikTok are we facing an addiction problem with social media? Short form content like TikTok and its derivatives today. Do you think this is an addiction crisis? Today in the U.S. I don't know.
Well, that's certainly a term that's been used before, social media addiction.
I mean, yeah, and I'm sort of thinking about that. Are we in a crisis? Maybe not as bad as opium wars. Where the whole government was destabilized because of a drug. But we're kind of functioning addicts. Able to keep the system sort of going, but eternally struggling. I don't know. That's my question.
I mean, what I was trying to aim at is it's kind of young people don't vote, and it's well, they don't perceive that their actions could theoretically have a consequence. You know what I mean? So I think it engenders passivity and lets the things that are bad continue to happen. And it kind of I guess as you would get older, it might even instill a kind of like, this is the way it is, you know what I mean? There is no better world. The world is the way that it is. We are at the end of history, you know, like there is no like better world. The world is the way that it is, you know what I mean? A kind of defeatism, and like, you know, and you don't care about that because you can kind of, you can play video games and watch TikTok and stuff, you know what I mean? So there's like some like immediate like there's some satisfaction, like minor satisfaction that you can get. Not the satisfaction of like having a successful career and like, you know, like having lived a long and good life, you know what I mean? But in the temporal sense, yes, you can kind of skip over like the fact that you're not getting your life goals fulfilled because like society is blocking.
So these are just kind of quick escapist hits?
Yeah.
That we're getting? Okay.
Well, I want to go back to when you said that like younger people aren't voting as much, because I do feel like that it kind of goes into like our conversation we had last week when we talked about like complacency. Like I feel like a lot like now because of social media, it's kind of like we don't make a difference. Like, oh well, if I vote, that's like, you know, it's like a whole year from now and it doesn't really matter, and like all this stuff, or just like things like that, where it's just like the things that are outside of like immediate, like, oh, okay, I like get immediate satisfaction from this, kind of like a drug, then like it doesn't really matter because I don't have to worry about it right now. So, yeah.
I want to go back on the topic that you said history's over. What do you mean by history's over? Because I feel like our history is kind of just now beginning. Like, there's history that's happened in the 1900s and that's impacted us today, but we are a new generation and we are going to be the next adults that have kids and whatnot. So we kind of have our own history. We can start our own history. We don't have to let the past determine what happens in the future.
If I could jump in there, I could recommend to you, I don't know if this is what you were touching on, but for some reason I keep going back to 1988. But there was a sort of philosopher, sociologist, historian named Francis Fukuyama. And he wrote a book. Is this what you were?
Yes.
He wrote a book called The End of History. And I think that might be what Tyler was arguing about, that essentially great things don't happen anymore. Large things don't happen anymore. It's just sort of day-to-day management.
And it's also in part like believing that neoliberalism as like an ideology is like the highest, like basically considering like, you know, the way the American government works now and the way the world order is structured is the optimal solution. We found it, you know what I mean? It's like it's saying that like, oh yes, you know, neoliberalism, the free of the market, the free of the people, that is the universal truth. We've finally arrived at it. We just need to do more of that and more good things will happen. So it's kind of more, I was more saying that like a defeatism of people kind of just like going along with that, you know what I mean, and believing in that and like not like critiquing it and like critically looking at it. Not in the sense that like, you know, so it's more of me critiquing that and saying there isn't the end of history, but when people like, you know, kind of check out of society, they're kind of saying that it's the end of history, you know what I mean? They're giving up, they're capitulating, they're saying, well, this is the way the world is, I give up. You know what I mean?
Okay, and so I would recommend that you actually look up that book, The End of History. But you're arguing that there's been a lot that you would argue against that, is what you're suggesting. And I think a lot of people would say, since that book came out, there have been all sorts of major things that have happened and big changes in the world. The collapse of communism in Europe. The rise of international terrorism, the development of technology. Technologies as advanced as we thought we were in 1988, the advancement of technologies that we could not have even imagined back then. So I think there are people who might agree with you, but is that what you're suggesting, that it hasn't ended yet?
Yeah, I don't think it has it.
I think it's just like nihilism versus hope, like positivity, negativity. I think everybody's going to continue to think like different stuff. You're good. I think it just depends on your outlook in life. I know there's a lot of negative stuff, including like stuff that goes on with like TikTok and stuff, but there's also a lot of positive things, even including TikTok, like how it's been used to garner charities and help with like social justice issues and stuff. So I think it's just a differing in like ideas. Not that neither one of them is correct or wrong. If that makes any sense.
So let me ask, are there any changes up ahead? Is this just going to be more of the same? Do you think is anything going to replace TikTok specifically or social media in general? Is there any hope for our attention spans? I know there's a lot of broad questions there, but it's a lot for you to discuss. What do you think?
Yes, for like the replacement of stuff, but I don't think it's possible to say what that is, because if you knew what it was, you already have made it, and it'd already be there. But yeah, I think stuff's going to continue to evolve. I don't think we're at the stagnation point of creation.
I think one clue you can get as to whether we can imagine or not is to look at media, films, books, etc., that try to predict the future. Movies that are set in the future, for example. And there are often things that they predict will be developed hundreds of years from now that 5 years later we already have. Back in the 60s, they showed Star Trek had these little communicators, and we all have them now. Okay? Far more sophisticated than what they had, supposedly 300 years from now. But there are other things that they predict that are wildly exaggerated and couldn't possibly happen. Of course, a lot of that is for storytelling purposes. But there are also things that are wildly exaggerated and couldn't possibly happen in thousands of years, let alone hundreds of years. Yeah.
I think there's definitely like things will change because like especially in like technology circles, they always do. Like nothing else. Like these companies don't have long shelf lives, or at the very least, the products they push out don't. They always get replaced by some new innovation, by some new company, or the same company pushing out a newer product. But the overall trend and the direction it's heading, I think, will stick the same because it's what sells.
The thing that comes to my mind is the internet, something that we take for granted today. And, I know I don't look it, but I'm old enough to remember before there was an internet. I was here before, well, not before there was an internet, but before the web, the World Wide Web took off and the graphical internet. I mean, there was email before that. And there were text-based websites in the very early 90s. And it was a concept that people had trouble grasping. It was something that, what does that mean to say internet? It's something we take for granted now. You don't even think about it, right? You just go online and you do whatever you do. And yet 30 years ago, there were people who didn't understand what it was or how you could possibly use it or what it would be good for. And so it may be that 30 years from now, there are going to be things that we can't even imagine right now. We kind of think, okay, this is it. This is what there is. But there may be things coming along that we can't even fathom, that have to be explained to us. What do you mean by this? What is this thing? What am I going to do with it? That's what people were asking about the internet and the web. What's the purpose of it? Did you want to? Yeah.
At least what I see is like expanding on right now is like AI. I feel like with like all of the AI stuff in the news, it's definitely like rapidly changed since it was introduced, and like you have things with like videos of people where it seems like it's their actual voice saying stuff, and it's really scary how that could, as it like advances, how that could be used in the future. But at least like looking on to see how much we've changed and how fast we've progressed, I think that for that it can be really scary, just because like I kind of grew up in a weird, like, my grandparents helped a lot raising me, so I still remember using the rotary phone. And then I wasn't allowed like a regular phone till I started driving, because they were like, we know that you will get lost, you need maps. But until then I had like a little flip phone, so I feel like I'm like, at least I've seen and been around a lot of like the old technology to see how much things have like truly advanced. Thinking about things like AI, I don't even know how that could like change in the future. Like, I just think that it can encompass so much.
I mean, speaking of opiates, I mean, like, you can't even, like, write a goddamn text to your mother anymore. You're gonna get an AI to do it. Like, those AI commercials, man, that are like, oh, you know, it's my husband's anniversary. I'm just gonna, like, have an AI, like, compose, like, some stupid photo album. And it's like, oh, man, that's like, I mean, if AI is the future, that's a dark path, honestly. It's basically, it's a downgrade morally from short form content.
Let me give you a movie recommendation, if you can find it. It might be on YouTube, I don't know. From the early 1970s that dealt with what we now call AI in a sort of, science fiction horror story kind of thing. It's a real schlocky movie by today's standards, but it was really scary back then. It was originally called The Forbidden Project, Forbin. It later went by the title Colossus, The Forbidden Project. And it was about an AI computer it was about an American AI computer that discovered a similar Russian AI computer, and they merged and essentially took over the world. And I mean, it's kind of really goofy by today's standards. Even back then, I remember watching it with my dad, and my dad's first thought was, why don't they just pull the plug on it? Why don't they just unplug it? But it's really about technology that gets out of control and starts taking over us. Now, again, it's a real kind of schlocky, silly film by today's standards. It's fun to watch. But there are some elements in there. I mean, we are struggling with disinformation nowadays. And a lot of social media is populated not just by human beings, but by these bots, right? By these artificial bots that post things online that are designed to rile us up, that are designed to get hits and clicks. And so we're actually dealing with some of that now. And we don't even, and in many instances, we don't even know it. I would say in the immediate, we don't know it. You don't know a real person from a bot when you see comments in a comment section on Instagram or Facebook or TikTok or whatever.
X. I see it's an X a lot, literally. I see a post that was posted 5 minutes ago. It's all of a sudden, boom, 1,000 comments, literally.
Yeah. Can we deal with that? Is that technology taking over us? Is that something that we need to worry about? Or do we have a handle on it? Or do we even know whether we have a handle on it or not, or know what the problem is?
I can't remember who said it, but there was like a saying where I was like, I want AI to do my dishes and my laundry so I can focus on art. But it kind of feels like now it's AI is doing the art so we can do our dishes and laundry.
Yeah, okay, that's a good analogy, that it's not quite working out the way we wanted to work it out. And in fact, that was a sort of common trope of a lot of science fiction, was the idea that, we want to invent machines to do all the drudgery for us so that we can concentrate on art and music and philosophy and thinking. And we may be seeing the opposite, that it's creating art and images and writing and taking that away from us.
No, I definitely agree with that. I changed my major because AI was taking over what I wanted to do. I'm a graphic designer and literally got a degree in high school of graphic design. And then I come here and I'm in 1 year of art classes and they want to take me back to the basics when I know I'm well advanced past that. But then I get to one of my computer classes that I need for my art major and AI is all over it. I'm like, I can't even click a button without AI popping up and saying, hey, you should do this instead and let me do it for you. So I know that if I were to graduate out of college with a graphic design degree, I'm not going to have a job with graphic design. There's always going to be police officers. I'm now a criminal justice major. So there's always going to be police officers and whatnot that the world needs, but you can easily do art. And they're going to hire, like somebody like Google one day might hire somebody who knows AI well more advanced than somebody who knows how to do it by hand. So.
But now they even have those little robot police dogs
What?
that are walking around.
Not in my counties, not that I've seen.
Yeah.
Maybe that's like in the White House, but not here.
Yeah, they have robot patrollers now that will go into places where humans ordinarily either won't or couldn't go.
Well, the only reason I can
But it's
see
even
that
there.
happening is for a SWAT team, because that's protection of human lives.
Okay. Yeah.
I wouldn't use it on a day-to-day call for a police officer.
I'm sorry. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so as
Yeah,
like,
we're gonna wind down now.
yeah, as like the last few minutes come, since we've talked about how bad TikTok is, we also have a QR code to our Instagram. So if you want to keep updates, that's there. I also have a QR code to our group me. We're gonna be doing like other events throughout the semester to hopefully like pulse like just like learning, and then also give like opportunities to students in like poli-sci or just like general field. So if you want to keep up to date on like different events, we got those too. And we will be having that special event next week with Professor Montagno. So if you're interested in learning like some of the intros of like political and philosophy, please come to that.
Good. All right. Yeah, we're just about winding up, but we do have a few, maybe a couple of minutes left. What do you think the future holds? Is it going to get better? Is it going to get worse? Now, one of the things I've argued, I've actually mentioned in previous Crossroads discussions, is that we have learned to adapt to these things, specifically with disinformation online. I mentioned the fact that we learned, for example, a century or more ago to deal with movie editing. When early cinematographers first discovered that they could film things, that they could record images, but especially then edit those images to make things appear and disappear and do things that wouldn't normally happen. Early viewers of these images, of these films, many people thought it was magic. Many people didn't realize it was film editing, and yet we have developed to realize, oh, okay, special effects, film editing. Do you think that we will develop to recognize, okay, that's AI, or that's an internet bot, or that's artificial or something? Do you think we will, what does the future hold? Will we be able to do that? Or is what we're dealing with now a step beyond just film editing?
I would say it's almost like the uncanny valley where a human and a robot are so similar to where it's difficult to tell, but there's still that awkwardness to where it's not normal. And so I think that's what will kind of kick in for the majority of people.
Yeah. Robots haven't adapted to human emotions, thank God yet. But I can, even just looking at art photos or reading a paragraph of something, I'm like, why would you say that when you could describe it like this where another human being would understand why you're describing it? So I can tell, and I think that the future people will be able to continue to tell that AI is not human.
So you think we will be able to adapt? That's a good. Others?
Up to whether or not people want to, like, you can kind of look at stuff and tell, oh, that's fake, that person's got too many fingers. But like, I feel like as a grand scheme, it's just going to get harder and harder to just at a moment's glance be able to differentiate. And so you'll have to, like, when it comes to like information and stuff, you'll have to do your own research or to find other sources and stuff. So it's less so a can people do it, it's just a matter of will they, or will they just take the easy little.
Well, that question of will they is a very interesting one. And again, I'll look at AI, and the combination of AI and video. We were talking about film before. I don't know if you've seen these AI adaptations of early photography. You can find them on YouTube. They're fascinating. They will take a photograph from the 19th century and bring it to life. I mean, we've had colorization for a long time now, and it has developed amazingly quickly. So just a year or two ago, these animating 18th century or 19th century photographs was simply taking someone's face and they would barely move around, their eyes might blink and they might move their lips a little bit. But now they got people getting up and walking around and playing the piano and things like that. And it's amazingly realistic. And the reason I bring it up with what you're talking about is that it's fascinating. It's attractive. People want to see it. Even though you might know this is fake. I know it's fake. I know it's not real. I know they didn't have video in the 1850s. I still want to watch it and I want to see it. And my thought is, even though I know it's fake, my thought is, wow, this must be the way this famous person, looked and moved and acted back then. When in reality, we actually don't have any real idea. And by the way, that just as an aside, I'm just thinking right now, that brings me to another bit of media, if you've ever seen it, the animated, well, yes, that too, yes. But I was thinking of the animated show Futurama, and one of their standard tropes is, it's supposed to be in the 3000s, the 31st century. And one of their standard tropes is they show how historians in the 31st century portrayed humans in the 21st century, and they always get it wrong. It's always goofy and wrong, and the future doesn't get the past right. And that's something we might be able to judge now as we look at these videos. We have no idea whether or not these people actually moved and acted like that. But it's still fascinating to us. It's still interesting, even though we know it's fake. Others, any last words?
Let's just see what happens.
We'll see what happens.
Let's see what happens.
Okay. We'll be back here next week with Dr. Montagano. Bring friends, bring as many people as you can.
Will it be in the lobby? Yep.
Right here in the lobby as always.
I can